Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Just let me thank you for this session, the city of Izmir for hosting us and for organizing this wonderful event. It's very important, and it's very important session also because we will be talking about the Rome Charter, together with Karima Bennoun, Luca Bergamo, and other speakers. I'm not afraid actually to say that Rome Charter is extremely important. It's a milestone in the protection of cultural rights because it enshrines and widens the UN Declaration of Human Rights that contains although a very small part, but contains a part on cultural rights, but also because since Charter was approved, its contents have been recalled in every single document that came after. For example, this year I had the pleasure and the honor to chair as a Sherpa U20, and there is a part in the U20 final declaration in culture, but not only. Italy devoted a whole ministerial track of the G20 to culture, and there was the G20 of culture, and some of the content of the Rome Charter are contained in the Rome Declaration. Why it is important, the Charter? Because it empowers cities to guarantee cultural life as a key pillar of human development. Together with sustainable development, it is extremely important because also and above all in this particular year, these particular times where COVID is ravaging our lives, and it is important because way out of COVID, way out of the pandemic, is not only a health matter, it's not only an economic matter, but it's also a matter of human development. And in this respect, culture can really be a turning point. Enhancing culture in everyday life and protecting culture can be really a turning point. But also, on a more general viewpoint, it is important because the Charter contains the protection of minorities, women, of the different culture and all the diversities, and of children. And I would like also to point out that this deals also with what we can call the subtraction of culture. So the disappearing of present culture, a phenomenon that has always existed in human life, unfortunately, but that we have the bad luck of witnessing day by day in present realities, such as Afghanistan. But it also, the Rome Charter deals also with the importance of culture as an economic return for cities, and this is also a very important issue. So I would like to introducing our speaker that they are Karima Bennoun, Special Rapporteur of United Nations Cultural Rights, and Luca Karima Bennoun is connected from remote, and Luca Bergamo present here. Luca Bergamo is the former vice mayor of the city of Rome, and in some ways, but not only in some ways, the father of the culture, the person that contributed probably more than others to build this reality, to implement the charter. I would like first to pose some questions to Luca and Karima, and the first is, and would like them to be as brief as possible because I would like to put them three questions. First is, what is the relevance of the Rome Charter on cultural rights in the face of recovery? I just tried to touch this issue in my introduction. And the shaping on the UCLG Pact for the future. It would be important, in my opinion, to have some messages from Karim and from Luca in the light of their experience and how they, in their everyday life and in their tasks, how they emphasize the Charter. Karim, I think the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good morning, good afternoon. I'm so sorry not to be able to be with you in person, dear colleagues, but very pleased to be with you remotely. I'm so happy to have this opportunity to speak about the importance of the Rome Charter, which is something that I have cited in my own reports for the UN Human Rights Council. One of the key messages from the Rome Charter, which is also very dear to me as a professor of international law, is the emphasis on the legal duties of governments at all levels, based on Article 27 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, based on Article 15 of the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, the duty to ensure the right to take part in cultural life for everyone without discrimination. So we are reminded that this is not a luxury, this is a legal obligation as well as a human necessity. And I think many of the messages in the Rome Charter I tried to echo in the cultures framework in my report on COVID-19 and culture, including the importance of consultation, and the Charter itself is based on consultation. The idea that the decisions that we make now will determine the future of the 21st century. How we defend cultural rights now, during and after the pandemic will be defining of how those rights are enjoyed for years to come. The importance of rights-based approaches, and I'm very pleased that the Rome Charter emphasizes indeed rights, and of course the importance of solidarity. And I think the language of the Charter is very inspiring. It reminds us that through our values and creative actions, we shape the city of stones and dreams, and I think shaping that city really necessitates a human rights approach, a cultural rights approach.
Thank you, Karima. Luca, I'm actually a lawyer too, and it would be it has always been striking to me that this problem of the legal duties that Karima just pointed out. I would like you to, of course, hear about your experience in the Charter, but I would like also to have your opinion, and Karim as well, about legislative protection that Charter must have, is supposed to have, and there is a possibility that, of course, in a not near future, there will be dedicated prosecutors for the criminal offences against cultural rights. That is something that is enshrined in the Rome Charter, but also in the G20 declaration. It's quite a technical question, so I apologize. I think it is interesting.
Do I go? Yeah, okay. I would put it this way. Most constitutions, okay, and to this end, not the declaration itself, they state that the responsibility for the implementation of the rights and duties that they state. Even the Italian one has a very powerful article that is the number 3, and which is at the second comma, states that the Republic has the duty to remove the obstacles that impede, et cetera, et cetera. So I think there is a legal side, but there is also a cultural and political side. And what we wanted to do with the Charter is absorbing both, because there is a political responsibility, it's not just legal. And there is accountability, and show that the large part of this responsibility bear on the shoulders of local authorities. Because where people live and where that right is fulfilled or not fulfilled is largely in everyday life that people live in their communities. To this end, there might be a certain kind of prosecutors, but the empowerment, to empower people to hold accountable their representatives with regard to the implication that derive from the Human Rights Declaration first, and the Charter tried to make even more specific, is essential. And that's why I think its Charter has a very important political role. And I want to be clear to this. The Human Rights Declaration states that everyone has freely the right to freely participate in the cultural life of the community, enjoy the arts, and share in the scientific advancement, benefit and advancement. Freely, it implies, on one end, the democracy, or a system, but on the other end, equal opportunity, because there's no freedom without equal opportunity. And in a growing, in the face of growing inequalities that are not only economical, that are generated even by the urban shape and how cities develop, freely implies that when you plan the city development, you need to take into account how the cultural life can develop, and that participation can actually happen in relation to where the people physically live. Because if it is freely, you cannot even think to bypass the social dimension, which is enshrined in the declaration, because it's the cultural life of the community. Because after the Second World War, they were aware that living experiences together that way is one of the conditions of generation social capital, and therefore create social bonds. So you can even think that you can replace the human experience with the digital, because the digital doesn't build that kind of community. It can be part. So the Charter, it tried to put together these things, somehow put aside a season where cultural life, participation in cultural life has been seen as a commodity, and state that there is responsibility, and then provide tools, powerful tools, by bringing into the cultural policy the approach of capabilities, which is Amartya Sen and Martha Nussbaum thinking, and identifying 5 major capabilities that again are structured for policy, but structure, not example, because every culture and every situation has to be respected the way it is. So I don't tell you how you do things there. I just tell you that everyone has the right to create, to share, to enjoy, to protect. And it's like the 7 dwarfs, I always forget one. And according to the interpretation that you give to your reality, then that tools help you to develop strategies in order for each one equally enjoy the right to participate in culture. So there's a very strong connection with the legal dimension, but I also think that there is a strong call to political responsibility and democracy.
Thank you, Luca. We shifted actually in a very natural way to the implementation of the Charter. That is absolutely clear, the importance of the implementation from the intervention of Karim and from the intervention of Luca. I would like to ask both, how can public authorities fulfill their duty to support the citizens, the inhabitants, and to render possible the 5 goals of the Charter are discover, create, enjoy, share and protect culture. And in the implementation, in your personal experience, administrative experience, in the implementation, which have been the biggest challenges? Karima.
So there are many challenges that I think need to be addressed. One that I think we can never forget, as Luca emphasized the word freely in Article 27 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, this includes the ability of cultural rights defenders to be able to do their work freely. That is, those people who are working to implement cultural rights for all, and they face many human rights challenges in many different contexts in every region of the world. And I would ask that we all do all that we can to ensure their human rights and certainly to work for the freeing of those who may be imprisoned for doing this work. Unfortunately, there are many such cases around the world, but because I have the honor to address an event which is taking place in Turkey, I might mention one case, the case of Mr. Osman Kavala, a Turkish cultural rights defender who has been in detention for more than 1,400 days now. And there are many other examples that one could give, but I think one of our key tasks in making sure that we realize the Rome Charter is to support the human rights of those who are working to implement it on the ground in many contexts around the world. I also think in terms of implementation, as the Charter makes clear, we need policies, effective policies, and we need adequate resources, not just rhetoric. And that, I think, is also critically important. When I think of some of the major challenges that I have seen to the implementation of cultural rights around the world in my near 6 years in the mandate now, I think the lack of adequate resources devoted to culture, both at the national and international levels, as well as the local levels around the world, has really been at the top of the list. And if we don't address that aspect, I think it will be very difficult to make progress. But I also very much appreciated the point about accountability. We do need accountability for violations of cultural rights, and I've made this point clear both to the General Assembly and to the Human Rights Council at the UN, that we will make sure that these rights are taken seriously only when there is actual accountability, whether it's legal accountability or political accountability or other forms of accountability for such violations. So I think that this is also a very significant challenge that we need to address. I have looked at, I'm sorry, was somebody else trying to reply there? No, okay, I'm sorry. I think I had, so I'll just finish then quickly with what I see as one of the most significant challenges faced by cultures around the world right now, which is the challenge, of course, of the climate emergency, which is really an overwhelming threat to cultures, in some places existential, where we literally have entire societies that may disappear in the sense that their territory may be submerged and the entire population may have to move elsewhere. But we also see so many of our cities threatened by extreme weather in ways that have a very negative impact on cultural life and cultural rights. And I'm very pleased about the emphasis in the Rome Charter on sustainability. I think this is a critically important issue for the cultural rights mandate to take up in the future. But I think if we apply the approach of the Charter, if we apply a human rights and cultural rights based approach to these issues, that the optimism expressed by the Charter, that is to imagine the future in hope, is indeed very possible. And I think I remember what an Afghan woman once said to me, that optimism is key to survival. So I think with the right strategies working together in collaboration, we have every reason to believe that we can achieve that future in hope. Thank you.
Thank you, Karim. Extremely important point. One can speak ages about every one of them. I would like to hear what Luca thinks about the points that I would like to highlight is the adequate resources, financement, the accountability. But probably more is the climate emergency and the link with the safeguard of the cultural heritage. Italians witness very close.
It's just too much. I don't think I can answer all the things in once in a short time. Let me highlight one point I think Karima was making, and I consider it fundamental, is with the Charter what we have been working, and just to make it clear, the Charter has been written, physically written by a small team, but it's been discussed by 45 cities, 45 international network, and more than 100 experts, and then brought to the UCLG World Council for first debate, then a global conference, then whatever. So it's not single person, but an important step is to actually clearly linking the human right dimension with the sustainability dimension. Because sustainability is an outcome of people behavior, which includes decision making, which includes the make money, which includes a lot, but it's people behavior. And unless there is an emancipated humanity with an ethics that leads to sustainability, which is forged by the experiences that we do together with the others. And cultural experiences are among the most important because they connect each other first and foremost through emotions. So that's protection. So unless we do not do that work in parallel with the one that is political decision-making, legal and so on, it's very hard to imagine that we get to the point. So the Charter clearly connect the two dimensions. There's what are the implications of climate change that you're asking, and Karima was highlighting? They are immense because they threat life. The culture. There was a wonderful expression from Edgar Morin. There is a translation coming, Karima. I got the one. When he says we are not 50% cultural and 50% biological, so biological from the belly down and cultural top. They say we're 100% cultural and 100% biological. I was, as an example, making, think to death and how what we are structured on death, or birth, or eating, or even defecating. So that it's threatening human life, and our human life, it's cultural life. So I think that the Charter, if it is seriously taken as it seems to be taken, it provides a different scenario for decision maker and society to look at the way that we as humans develop our capacity to be a citizen in a society that is not committed just to consumption, but, let's say, to a dignified way of considering ourselves in relation to each other. That takes time, and the problem that we don't have time. So that's the dark side of things. But it seems to me that the pandemic has has provided a window in order to this discourse to move ahead, which it wasn't there before. So it's even important now to push an accelerator as much as possible in this moment and brought in changes. Again, and I stop myself, it's again, the changes that we are talking are largely in the hands of local authority decision making. Not all of them, but many of them. And the issues of resources which has been on, let's say, on the scene for a long time, cannot be solved unless we follow, let's say, the philosophy of the Charter, which is considering culture not as the good and services to spare time, but is considering the cultural life as one of the fundamental experiences that shape our citizenship. It's not the case. Cultural rights are equal to education right, to universal education. They are not less. So if we come to the understanding, then the resources issues, it might probably be faced in a different way, not just as advocate asking for money, but a societal push for have the adequate resources, which are not only money, are legal resources, protections, in order to move that direction. So resources is a massive problem. Dealing with heritage protection is super huge. Let's say the small, the little help I think we can do is just changing the check. How do you know they call it la scacchiera? What's the name of the checkboard? So change the situation on checkboard, and the Charter somehow try to do these things. I hope it will.
Thank you, Luca. The suggestions are piling up dramatically, so I have to limit them. I just want to pick up one of them, that the popular endorsement of the Charter, the need that Luca highlighted to reach out to the people, and that the people feel part, that the cultural rights are their own and they have to protect them. And in this respect, I would put you the last question, that is, in your personal experience as administrators, which innovative projects related to the Charter have been implemented in our cities and territories? Why they have been the successful ones and why? The unsuccessful one and why they have been successful? Rima.
So in some ways, I think that this question is perhaps better answered by those working within city administrations, but I can tell you from my perspective as the Special Rapporteur on Cultural Rights, at the moment I am especially inspired by those cities which I think really guided by values mentioned in the Rome Charter have opened up themselves as safe havens to those from cultural institutions, cultural workers and artists fleeing from Afghanistan. And I really thank the cities around the world which have started to do this, and I hope that other cities will emulate this approach very quickly. I think it very much is inspired by the generosity and the spirit of inclusion that is underscored in the Rome Charter. We're seeing hundreds, literally hundreds of cultural workers and artists who have to flee Afghanistan. I know one organization is working with a list, just one organization, of over 800 cultural workers and artists who need to flee. And I think cities can play a leadership role in this regard, pushing their governments, first of all, to accept refugees and to make sure that they are including people from the cultural sector in any programs for resettlement, but also then affording them the possibility to continue their cultural work in these cities which are going to serve as safe havens. And I think very much the spirit of the Rome Charter is similar to the spirit, for example, of the Afghan National Museum, whose motto is that a nation stays alive when its culture stays alive. So I think in the face of the overarching crisis that we've seen in Afghanistan, the cultural piece is critically important. I'm also very pleased when I have seen cities adopt approaches that focus on and emphasize the diversities of culture. And my final report for the General Assembly is going to be about cultural mixing and mixed cultural identities, very much informed by the writing of a Haitian poet, Stéphane Alexis, who said, "We are all the children of an infinity of cultures." That is certainly true of a great city like Izmir, the host for this event, and this is true for so many cities around the world. And I am especially pleased when I have seen initiatives at the local level that reflect those diversities, even as the context for our engagement with those diversities remains the context of the universal human rights framework. And I've tried to emphasize this organic relationship between respect for universality, the universality of human rights, and respect for diversity. But let me finally say, as I'm ending my term as Special Rapporteur on the 31st of October, how grateful I have been for the cooperation with cities and local governments around the world and with the UCLG, and how much I salute all of the work that you are doing in these areas to implement the values and commitments of the Rome Charter, and I look forward to our cooperation continuing in a different capacity in the future.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Karim. I think that one of the main goals of culture should be to protect diversity, to protect the weak, and to protect people actually being persecuted. That is the case of Afghanistan. Luca, probably you have you for sure have a very direct experience in implementing the charter and
Okay, let's say that there's no implementation of the charter, considering the charter was, came to life 6 months ago, no longer than that. But the charter exists because there are...
Actually, of the principles. Sorry.
The principle, no, I'm joking. But the charter comes because there are massive experiences. And I see here, sitting here in the first line, Marc Villaruba, Lyon, which is made experiences in the rehabilitation of social part of Lyon, or if I go back, I think to the experience in Medellin and Bogota or Malmo or whatever. So that each cities, oh no, not each, but many cities has somehow worked in order to deal with the issues that lead to the principle of the charter. I can give you one example that is related to my recently finished job in Rome, which makes sense in Rome and not necessarily everywhere else. But Rome is a strange city because it's very wide. It's 1,200 square kilometers, meaning that for 2.8 million inhabitants. And as obviously being an ancient city, the cultural institutional structures are in the heart of the city because the cultural institutions were for the elite, that their origin was for the elite, was not for everybody. Therefore, if you live in something that is suburbs and you want to attend, participate, have a relationship, one of major cultural institutions, you need to take your car and considering the transportation system in Rome and maybe drive 30 kilometers in urban traffic, which means and obviously that those that are far from the opportunity, they less make use of it. Yeah. So we decided to place the public libraries that were the only structures existing distributed in all territories at the heart of a system that connect the public libraries with the major cultural institution. To this way, we brought some of the major festivals as a science festival, growing from 200 events in one place to 1,000 things in a month in 70 places in the cities. And we did it structurally. So that's one principle. I think we are largely done with our time. And there are interesting speakers because they can tell you their own version of the things. I just want to really join with Karima to thank the cities and culture and UCLG, because without the cities together and without UCLG that works to make cities together, I hardly see a sustainable world ahead. But on the contrary, I think that what I've been witnessing the last few years gives me reasonable hope. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you, Luca. Now it's time to give floor to our speakers. I would like to start giving the floor to Carlos Martinez, Mayor of Soria or Soria. I apologize for the mistake. And UCLG Envoy for New Urban Agenda. Carlos, floor is yours.
Buenas tardes. Hola. ¿Se escucha bien?
Hello, good morning. Can you hear me well? Good afternoon to everyone. It's a great pleasure to meet with you again through this technology, even though I'm not there physically. And thank you for welcoming us. This summit has been very important for me, and I've learned many things from what I've listened. In this context, it's clear that what we're discussing is very complex, and the pandemic and what it brings to our lives, and everything becomes much more complex. Many areas face issues with freedom and restrictions of freedom, and it makes it difficult to realize the conditions of the Rome Chart. But we're here, we have optimism, we have an optimist perspective. As Karima said, education and culture is the founding values for us, and it is clear that we need to go for a change in model. We are aware of this. We need a more just and free society that we need to build. And the implementation of the Rome Chart and local governments. Of course, there are certain subjects that we need to touch upon. There are 17 sustainable development goals in front of us, and especially democracy and accessibility to culture is what we're focusing on in this new urban agenda. And for us, for the USLG, it is very important to focus on this issue. And in a big scale, there are cities in Spain that I work on. The population of the city I'm responsible for is 40 to 50,000. And this is a very big-scale city. We are optimistic about the developments that we're going to make, and we think that we can share our cultural richness. And Kramer talked about some very key points about accessibility to cultural life without any discrimination. And these were very important, so I took some notes. For example, the city libraries of Rome and how the ferries are replaced in places where the public can easily access with public transportation was important. The incentive for public to access arts, cinema, libraries, and literature is important. And when public doesn't have certain opportunities accessing these arts as a viewer or as a consumer. It's very difficult, and in this situation, the public, almost half of public is being discriminated when we place all the cultural activities in the center of the cities. The suburban areas are being discriminated. We don't, when we don't give them opportunities where they can grow, where they can access education and culture, we are actually harming them. And this is a challenge for us that we need to tackle, and we need to put this on the table in our international agenda. And all local and national governments need to make this a point of their own agenda and make this an issue. We're talking about a very old date. Many investments are being made so that cultural development can happen, and certain tools should be presented so that these goals can be achieved. And we're trying to share these opportunities. However, there are still issues in regards to people being able to access culture and arts, and we still need to work a lot on this issue. Of course, we're still talking about an area in Europe that has a lot of privilege, but there are many areas that don't have this privilege, that needs better accessibility. And when this new model is being stopped, when we can't apply necessary cultural policies and implementations. And for now, for the first part, I want to end my speech. And I think we can change the world through culture. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Carlos. The problem of the access of culture is extremely very important, such as the possibility to bring the culture in the suburbs. In this respect, I would like now to give the floor to, sorry, there is a video message from Vanessa Bojorquez from the City Council of Mexico City.
Buen día a todas y todos. A nombre de la jefa de gobierno de la Ciudad de México.
Hello, I am Vanessa Bojorquez from Mexico City. And I want to say my best regards to the UCLG. And I want to say hello to everyone in Izmir that is participating in this summit. We are going through a process of deep thinking regarding COVID and what culture's role is in this context. And in different cities, from different local governments, people have been talking about their own experiences regarding culture, and we think that culture is very important. Cultural resilience is very important for sustainable development goals. And about the Rome Chart experience in 2020, the Italian capital made an incentive to create these conditions, and it was supported by the Sahelian Culture Commission and the UCLG. And our response, when we look at our response, we need to highlight certain things, because what the Rome Chart is talking about is very comprehensive, and it has a big scope, and we think national governments and local governments should work together and they should cooperate. This is a very important subject. All individuals must have accessibility in their local communities and in their countries. Local governments therefore need to have positive incentives for people. In Rome Chart, there are 5 principles in order to achieve these goals. When we are dealing with the challenges as humanity, we are dealing with certain problems. One of them is creating cities, planning cities in a way that will protect cultural diversity. Another one is the increase of variety in culture and for everyone to be able to access cultural activities, and at the same time for the cultural resources to be preserved. As Mexico City, we think that Rome Chart is parallel to what we believe in the cultural development. And in the Constitution of the Mexico City, cultural rights are also taken into account in the same approach. There are certain actions and programs so that we can create opportunities for the people to access cultural resources. In Mexico City, a stage has been reorganized for people to do cultural activities, and certain networks were open to public accessibility free of charge, especially for the suburban areas that are far away from the Mexico City center. And another program that I want to mention is names Art, Knowledge, and Innovation Points. And in this program, we have tried to tackle the issue of communities that have disadvantages to access art activities and knowledge. And a third example is for children and young people, which we have opened a museum for the youth and the children, and this created a 20,000 square meter culture area for the accessibility of children and young people. And right now, especially in the peripheral areas of the city, different people with different identities were considered in the creation of these programs. And I think this summit is an amazing event that helps us further carry our message to future generations, and we need to put our forces together with the local governments, and I think we can create a global change if we manage this. I think we can carry ourselves into the future. Thank you very much for all of your efforts. You honestly inspire us. Thank you.
Important the point you raised about the cooperation between national and local level. I would like now to give the floor to Jordi Martí, Deputy Mayor for Culture at the Municipality of Barcelona.
Hola, buenas tardes. Muchísimas gracias. Espero que...
Hello, everyone. I hope you can hear me well. And I would like to salute you all, to all the participants, all the listeners from Barcelona. In my first speech, I would like to talk about the importance of Rome Charter. And one important point is that, and I can be saying that because I have a great role and mission. Now, a person, if that person takes the perspective of the cultural policies and if they want to change them, if they approach as a human-focused, centered way, and when we talk about actively participating in social life, and I'm also in a process of meeting with the journalists, orchestra. So if we talk about this kind of thing, we can talk about that culture is making use of 2 points. One is development, and the other one is a factor for economic growth. And the sectors that we worked in were like this, but when we look at Rome Charter, it has a contribution, pedagogic contribution, that we can have a different perspective. Culture, yeah, there has been some changes in tackling these topics, but culture, protecting a person's rights. So with 5 words here, there was a topic to make some changes. There are 5 factors in this culture life, and it's a complicated area, in fact. Luca has mentioned that the changing the perspectives of these cities is really important. Yes, local governments have their own resources, and I think they're enough, but still, culture is thought that it is only for the economic growth, and it's this kind of perspective that people still have. And Barcelona, in my opinion, has taken this change of perspective into consideration seriously, and all rights plan was confirmed recently. And when I read Rome Charter, these 5 vector scale could be used. So I think it's a better pedagogical tool. So what kind of axis that we're talking about? One of them is cultural interaction, or interaction between cultures. This is at the same time for some specific conventions. It's a kind of container for specific traditions. When we look at the cultural life of a city, cultural agenda of a city, providing where a cultural diverse surrounding is there, providing this cultural surrounding is important. And I would like to say that humbly, that all the awards in the last 20 years, all festivals and cultural activities, generally have been participated by very few women. So in juries, in the award winners, there were very few winners, and this should be taken as an inevitable approach, that more women should be integrated and participated. And also, I would like to also talk about being linear, being horizontal. While some cultural activities are being organized, equal participation should be guaranteed so that they could be organized, they could be then designed. And also the fourth one is decentralization, and the cities have been changing, and Barcelona is quite a big city, and however there are 36 municipalities, but they are in 3 regions. And from the Rome Charter perspective, whatever postcode a citizen has in the region they live should have the same rights of other citizens. And at local scale, there should be a different interpretation. And the last vector is sustainable, environmentalist sustainability, I would say, environmental sustainability, because one of the important goals of human beings is that keeping on or continuing the survival of nature and also survival of the human beings. Yeah, cities do not change, gods change. So there's a saying, and now the perspectives, the forms of thoughts, and use of city spaces are more diverse, and this old neoliberal model should be transformed with some thoughts, especially to struggle climate change. So the role of culture is really big, and in Rome Charter has this as well. So in practice, not only organizing big festivals, but we should have some critical perspective, and we should have this kind of citizens' rights.
On the many suggestions of your speech, the need of every single person should enjoy the equality of the rights, that is extremely connected with bringing culture and cultural manifestation in the suburbs of the city. Now I give the floor to Professor Frida Trollmir, of the Chair of Cultural Board of the City of Malmö.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, estimated speakers, and panel members. On behalf of the City of Malmö, I am delighted and honored to be attending to the UCLG Culture Summit, and to be here with you today. A part of this important conversation on cultural rights and communities. My name is Frida Trollmir, and I am the Deputy Mayor in charge of culture and leisure here in Malmö. In our city, we work proactively in both policy and practice with cultural rights for all our citizens, reflecting the principles of the 2020 Rome Charter. Culture is the glue that holds our cities together. It gives rise to meetings between citizens and inspiration and expression to our hopes and dreams for ourselves, our closest communities, and our wide society. Just as every Swedish person has an allemansrätt that gives the rights to access nature, so the city of Malmö is also committed to the right of access to art and culture in all their diverse forms. In Malmö, a city with 350,000 inhabitants, where people from over 180 different countries live and work side by side, we strongly believe that everyone should have not only the right, but also the real opportunity to participate in cultural life, so that all our citizens can not only discover and enjoy culture, but are also able to share and create culture together, as well as protecting their own culture and the culture of the city itself. The Rome Charter is a set of guiding principles for cultural rights. Malmö is very proud of having been a part of producing it, together with other cities and cultural experts. The ongoing global pandemic has highlighted just how vital cultural life is for our cities. The Rome Charter provides inspiration and guidance for the renewal of the cities through culture. It places culture rights at the beating heart of the sustainable urban development. In Malmö, we have a proud record of supporting cultural rights defenders, both at home and internationally. We offer a safe haven to threatened artists and writers, including from Afghanistan, as a part of the ICON network. And at the newly opened David Isaac Library for Freedom of Expression, you can find, read, and borrow books that would have been forbidden or burned if someone else had decided. The library is a collaboration between the city of Malmö, Swedish PEN, and ICON. We will also put a special emphasis on the cultural rights of children, in line with the UN Convention on the Rights of Children, which became law in Sweden in January 2020. We also place special focus on the cultural rights of minorities and underrepresented groups. Our city, rich but delicate cultural ecosystem, especially the independent sector of it, has suffered significant damage due to the effects of the pandemic. And citizens have also felt the impact when culture facilities have been closed and Malmö's cultural offer has been diminished. The city of Malmö has worked very proactively during the crisis, providing finance and other support to soften the impact of the pandemic on culture in our city. The national and regional governments have been our partner in this. I would like to end with the reminder that, as Karima Benoit and Luca Bergamo have repeated here today, that cultural rights are human rights. For us, the right to culture is central to our vision for the democracy and inclusive city. When it is Sweden's turn to choose a European capital of culture for 2029, Malmö will focus on this. If we receive the honor of being chosen, then we will build further on the concept of cultural rights. Going forward, we are more aware than ever before of the vital role of culture in our city life, and will work to broaden the opportunities for all Malmö's citizens to discover, enjoy, share, create, and protect their own culture, and the one of our fine city. Thank you.
Thank you, Frida, and thank you for stressing once again for the need of safeguarding the diversity, cultural diversity. I now give the floor to Professor Asu Aksoy. She is in presence of the University of Istanbul.
Hello, I decided to move here to change the atmosphere a bit and bring the final energy to this very interesting session. I want to thank to UCLG and Izmir municipality and to Izmir mayor for organizing this culture summit with demonstrating different aspects, different challenges around this issue of culture. When we talk about culture, we are talking about human rights, we are talking about environment, we are talking about development, economy, and so forth. What I want to make 3 points, and I have very short time. When we talk about cultural participation, I would like to argue that participation should be taken in a more broader sense, that cultural participation should be seen as rights of each person individually and in community with others, as well as groups of people, to develop and express their humanity, their worldview, and the meanings they assign to human existence and development. This is a text, a UN text. So this is more than actually taking part in cultural activities. This is actually expressing our values, the things that we find valuable in life, that gives meaning, identity. So cultural rights are, I see cultural rights in this perspective of expressing these values. And of course, as Karima Benoon underlined, cultural rights are about human rights, and it's about freedom of expression, democracy, and justice. And the fact that Osman Kavala in Turkey, one of our most cherished cultural operator, is now in prison, this is the bottom line, that without freedom of expression, without democracy and justice, we cannot really talk about cultural rights. This is the bottom line. And as speaker, I think Karima mentioned hope. So in Turkey, we have hope. We carry having our hope. The civil society, the artists, many organizations have been working, campaigning for the release of Osman Kavala. And we hope that he will be immediately released and he will achieve his freedom. So yes, freedom, democracy, and justice. But what I want to propose for cultural rights to be effective, that we need another right to be recognized and established, and that is the right to custodianship. This concept we know from heritage. This is a central concept in heritage, that custodianship or co-stewardship, it's those values, the territories, the places, the localities that we grow in, that we are part of, that we work with. These territories, the places, the identity, the sources of our identities, that the things we value, that we care for, unless our care is recognized, unless there is a legal provision which recognizes this custodianship that people take on board, that then cultural rights remain rather, in my opinion, ineffective, or it is almost like too abstract. To illustrate this point, I have been having conversations about the imagination of city as a rural-urban complex. We need to imagine our cities in a kind of much broader nature-culture unity, rural-urban unity. So Izmir is, for instance, has a huge rural culture, rural communities. And these rural communities, for instance, it's very tactile, that they are part of the territories that they work with, the land. And this land is, through working with this land, they generate knowledge, ways of life. So when these territories are taken away from them, when these territories are destroyed by unsustainable urbanization, by unsustainable tourism, by economic developmentalist extractive policies, when these territories are taken away from people, then what remains for these people? What remains? These people have to, basically, they are detached. This cultural life that they've been developing with this unity with territory. And when I say territory, it doesn't have to be rural land. It is also city neighborhoods. It's the cinemas that we have. Cinemas are part of our identities. Neighborhoods, streets. And actually, we have been in Turkey, in many different cities, neighborhoods, we have been, civil society have been campaigning, struggling to keep cinemas, to keep neighborhoods from these extractive, destructive development policies which gentrify, which open these spaces to totally different consumption, consumerist politics. So therefore, actually, so what I'm saying is that cultural rights can be more effective if people choose to take on the responsibility of custodianship for their territories, for the places, in the name of a common good, of course, then this custodianship should be protected by a legal code. And this is very much to do with city administrations, of course, this custodianship, or local administrations, because local authorities, this is the second point, that it is through local authority facilitation that sometimes you need local authorities to be co-stewards. So I'm not talking about states, I'm talking about people. So people's custodianship, that this is legally recognized. So therefore, cities are at the heart of this, actually. They can be, local authorities can be at the heart of the struggle. My second really plea is for local authorities is to reimagine cities in order to improve cultural participation, to reimagine cities as a kind of post-anthropocentric territories. Territories that are made up of ecological clusters, corridors, basins. Izmir has a plan with 3 basins, agricultural productive zones, the territory. So imagining cities as coming and working in unison with these productive agricultural, natural things that have been given to us, if you like. So how can we reimagine cities working together? City of Gardens, Vandana Shiva said, City of Gardens, wonderful. We have bostans cultures. Bostans are vegetable gardens. We have them in our cities. More gardens, more bostans. Circular culture is what the mayor of Izmir said. I want to say circular city, of course. Circular economy, circular culture, circular city. We know what that means. Cultural diversity, local authorities, of course, we've heard all these cases. And we have very good examples also from Turkey, where we have city councils setting up assemblies made up of refugees, migrants, and local people, living in the neighborhood. So it is actually local governments against responsibility to open up these spaces, to facilitate for these different, marginalized, in danger, especially cultural expressions to come together and so that they are empowered. So finally, I want to say that COVID was a disease, a pandemic, and this is, of course, introduced this issue of dealing with risk. And COVID, we will deal with COVID, but there will be new ones, perhaps. And we are actually facing a climate crisis. So this is our biggest risk, if you like. But what COVID showed is that we are living in a new environment of skepticism. And this is a skepticism about science. This is what is called the post-truth era. That we are living in an environment where, social media, all these skeptical kind of worldviews are gaining more and more ground. So therefore, in this new environment, I think that again it is the local government's responsibility or a challenge to deal with the skepticism. And how to deal with the skepticism is actually through opening up public spaces, public spheres for the participation of as many voices as possible. Scientific voices, NGOs, and we need also facilitations which translates scientific information into citizens' science, if you like. So we need these public spaces, public facilitations, and who does these activities? It's NGOs, it's the civil societies, it's art organizations, cultural organizations. They are doing this work. So therefore, the local authorities, their perhaps challenge is how to make them, to empower them by giving them spaces, facilities to come together and deal with the skepticism. Okay, so, I can give interesting examples also from Turkey, which is about creating these open spaces, public spaces in urban environments. But this is more and more, this is what we need in our cities especially. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Aksoy. I wonder if we have just some minutes for one takeaway per speaker, one thought per speaker, 1 minute each, starting with Karima.
So thank you very much. I think for me, the big takeaway is to hear similar messages coming from cities around the world, again, underscoring the commitment to cultural rights as human rights, underscoring the commitment to our international cooperation in the cultural field, and underscoring that the optimistic view is indeed a possible view if we work together on the basis of the cultural rights vision. Thank you.
Thank you, Karima. Luca?
The takeaway is listening to the other speakers and experiences from Barcelona to Malmo, Mexico's and whatever. I think we can understand the potential and basically how far the implementation of culture of the Rome Charter has gone without the existence of the Charter of Rome. But what the political meaning of the Charter, I think my takeaway is that since a few years ago, it was very difficult to hear in that kind of conversation the word human right related to culture. And that is a change. It's a substantial change, which I would possibly make even bolder by quoting what Charter says about culture. Because the Charter says culture is how we, human people, transform experience, I would say, perception into meaning. So we as a biological, we transform, we create meaning through cultures. And therefore we shape ideology, and the ideology shape the culture. Therefore is everything we do beyond survival. So when we state that there is a right for everyone rights to participate in the cultural life of the community freely, we are stating that everyone has the right to have a say in the way that we understand and shape ourselves and the world outside. And that's why focusing on the participation with that approach is somehow rewarding the efforts that many cities has done, which has been witnessed by the speakers, and that were not enough acknowledged in the global scene. So I think I thank all those that are working, Jordi and Carlos and the others, because they now, I mean, I'm out of the game, but now I have a tremendous job ahead.
Thank you, Luke, and then I give the floor to Carlos. Please, 1 minute, Carlos.
Sí, un minuto. Nada, un mensaje claro.
So as a take-home message, we can say that our values gives a chance to realize our biodiversity. So cultural changes are there, and democratically we can move forward. As Guluko pointed out, I'd like to say that there should be a political commitment, through imagination, through commitment, and the cultural rights. For that, we need to have a new model, and we need to use it for having a new space for everyone. That is the reality.
And I give the floor to Jordi.
Yo
Roma Charter is important for the cities, for realizing the political situation. As Kalima pointed out, we have to underscore this. And if we don't own the cultural rights, there is no such a world, because we know that the right of freedom of expression is limited. You cannot say what do you want in terms of women. In the, there are many countries, and there are, and for the people living in the periphery, there are limitations, and we have to address those all. Therefore, the role of the cities, the role of the municipalities, is a political role, as we observe. So, in order to have the cultural rights, it's an important task, and internationally that should be valid for all the perspectives and countries, so that it's not only when they're endangered in the fundamental rights or basic human rights are endangered, which we have to do it all the time, and most of the countries are affected by these trends, and there are some so-called democracies, and there are some dark regions, and there are limitations with the rights and hierarchy. Therefore, for all the policies, the democratic principles shouldn't be in the rights, and we have to, wherever we are, we have to defend the cultural rights, and this is an important task, and I'd like to thank you for organizing this event.
Frida, would you like to give us a final thought or your final takeaway of the meeting?
Frida, please unmute. Please unmute, Frida.
Sorry. All right, if I'm unmute now, can you hear me?
Yes, yes, now all fine.
Okay, I started again. So this was a very inspiring meeting, so thank you. And I take with me the hope that if we work cities together, helping and supporting each other, the principles of the 2020 Roma Charter can become a reality in more and more cities around the world. And so more people can freely exercise their cultural rights, because that is human rights. Thank you.
Thank you, Frida, very much. And finally, Professor Aksoy.
Very briefly, cultural participation is not an on and off affair. It's an ongoing process, and it involves our redefining, thinking about our ways of life. So it involves thinking about water, it involves thinking about trees, it involves thinking about diseases, food. It's incredible, and also urban design and so forth. So local authorities in every decision making processes, the challenge is to find ways of including people in making participatory processes where people can on a constant basis, through artistic means and cultural means, to express themselves in terms of how they envision the new way of life, a way of life to continue to be conserved or to be transformed.
Thank you very much. Oh, sorry. Thank you very much, and I would like to thank you once again, the speakers, for all their suggestions and their takeaways and their thoughts about the summit. There were some other suggestions arose in the summit that are not be recalled, but they are really present in our heads. I want to thank you all for being here, and once again, the UCLG and in the city of Izmir for organizing the summit. Thank you very much.